Welcome to the HR on the Offensive podcast, a weekly podcast by Lace Partners, a fundamentally different HR and payroll consultancy. Each week, we tackle some of the most interesting topics facing senior HR professionals. So whether that's from employee value proposition, performance management, people strategy, or even payroll, we cover it all. So join us for the next 30 minutes. And if you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, on with the show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the latest HR on the Offensive podcast. It's me, Chris Howard, joining you from a studio in London. Today, we are going to be talking about Less Stress, Part 3. We have a couple of lacers who have been the masterminds behind our latest white paper. It's the third in the series. They're going to talk about 1 and 2, but we're going to get onto 3, which is about unlocking the value of your digital investment. Let's do some introductions. Ffion, how are you doing?
Hi, Chris. I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah, you good? The thing you're most excited about this podcast is my fundamentally different question, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Definitely.
You're literally like
gripping the chair.
Gripping the chair.
Yeah.
Love it. Louise Brown. Lou, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm very well today, thank you.
This isn't your first podcast, is it?
It is indeed.
Oh, wow. And you get the
Big
studio
day.
for it as well.
I know. Big
love
day.
It.
Brought out the red
Absolutely love
carpet.
it. Right. We are going to talk about Less Stress, Part 3, but this tradition that we must adhere to on the HR on the Offensive podcast must be observed. And that tradition is to ask you a fundamentally different question, which is completely random and not related to HR. It's related to a story I've just read about a new craze kicking off called underwater rugby. I can't really picture it, but I thought to myself, if there was one random sport you could turn into an underwater sport, what would it be? Ffion, this is not your first rodeo, so I'm going to let you go first.
I think breakdancing would be quite cool.
Difficult as well.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the bottom, you just end up floating upwards as well.
Exactly. So, yeah, breakdancing.
I love it. Do you think you'd actually be a good break dancer underwater?
After enough wine, Chris, probably.
Fair play. Lou, what are you going for?
I think frisbee, whether it would float to the top or get more speed underwater, who knows?
You'd get people that would be really serious and into that as well. I can imagine it's all about the technique and things like that. I would go for golf because I can't imagine anything more difficult. If you think about when you first get onto a tee and you put your golf ball onto the tee, it wouldn't really go beyond there. So just seeing lots of people randomly thrashing at a golf ball amuses me. Let's focus on the white paper that you've both been integral in putting together. Before we go into that, I think it's worth us setting some context. So I'm going to ask Lou to go first. If you could just give our listeners or people that are watching this video, maybe just a minute or two on Less Stress, HRIS Part 1, about the journey to the cloud.
Yeah. Part 1 was all about the phase 0 approach. What happens as you are approaching the decision to kind of invest in a HRIS system. So obviously it's a lot of money. Businesses need to make sure that they've kind of defined why they're doing it and often put that case to the CFO or the CPO to then get that investment. So it was all about what we call the value case, not so much the business case, but why it has a lot of data behind it, but why you would get the kind of benefits realization from that investment ahead of then the implementation that we would plan out.
Yeah, and we've split it deliberately into those 3 sections. We've kind of, the metaphor that we've used is this journey up the mountain. So the second part of it, Ffion, is about getting to base camp. Can you talk about the second white paper that we released around November time, 2024?
Yep. So that one was about actually, you've got investment and now you have to do it. It's about the implementation of the HRIS and what that journey looks like. So if it's some organisation's first time, what are the key things that they need to consider and some tips we provide based on our experience as a consultancy partner. So yeah, it's about getting there.
Lou, you and I have had a couple of conversations just talking about your own experience. What I want to do is we've broken it down into 7 steps. I'll let you guys riff off of each other. Like one of you do step 1, one of you step 2, etc., and then build on it. It's good to get that perspective of where you've been in at companies, because we talked about how sometimes you've gone in and they're at step 3, almost Less Stress Part 3, Part 1, Part 2, some of the challenges. So we might get to that as we go through. But let's kick off with benefits realization. What is this first step? I guess is the first opening bit. What are we talking about in the opening part of the paper?
Yeah, of course. So The benefits realization is about how, I guess, to my piece around kind of phase zero, when you're building that value case and preparing the business and the stakeholders that effectively have the purse strings, when you're preparing for the investment, you need to define the points upon which you are going to drive value and what is your return on investment. So the piece is, once you've gone live, and the optimization is about how you recognize those benefits. So whatever they are, whatever you've kind of defined, and obviously it will vary, business to business, but if it's an ultimate kind of headcount saving, a cost saving, whatever it is, or an efficiency, it's about how we build the activity around benefits realization, make sure we've got the right people engaged in, who we're going to tell. Have we still got the right team in place that built the business case, that helped build out those metrics that you would, see through adoption, which we'll come on to later? And how then do you effectively prove that return on investment, and to whom and how often? So it's about creating that kind of structure and plan about the benefits realization.
And is this at this early stage? Again, I'm thinking back to the conversation that we had, where businesses, if they're looking at that, is that the bit in which quite often they'll be like, okay, we need to take a step back here. We aren't realizing the benefits here. So let's go back to stage 2, or even back to the first one. Rebuild our value case.
Yeah, I guess it depends how long you have that kind of benefits realization happening for. What often happens is you'll go live and then the project team disseminates or disappears. The problem that causes is there's less intent on that benefits realization. What you often find is that with all the best intentions, and you have the plan and the structures, in the absence of someone like us helping you in the organization kind of really stick to your guns and stick to your plan, the kind of going back a step often comes too late. So people will almost forget the step of benefits realization. They'll just go live, ride on that wave for 6 months, 12 months. And then at that point say, oh, okay, actually we're not, the example that we talked about was where I'd gone in as a head of HR operations globally, and the managers just hadn't signed up to it. So they'd already done the implementation. They'd got the investment case and the value signed up to, but I went in it must have been about 12 to 18 months after they've gone live, but the system wasn't working. It turned into the back-end HR system when it was a really good tier 2 tech. So there was no reason for that, but because they hadn't done the change management, they hadn't managed effectively the kind of key design decision that we would expect around the role of the line manager. We had to implement again, to your point. So we went back a step.
Anything you want to build on that before we then get onto the next bit, which is around the operating model?
Yeah, I think the only thing to build on is you have the go live party. Everyone celebrates. And then before you know it, you've got knocks on the door. When are we going to start getting value, guys? You invest a lot of money in that. So take that as part of your plan. Don't just plan up to go live or hypercare and then forget about it. That needs to be an integral part of the plan and the business case. And also, I'd say your design principles and your key design decisions are there for a reason, and make sure when you're going through design that you're sticking to those, because they will link back to your benefits case. So things like, we want line managers to do these HR activities. If you then don't make that decision in design, you will never realise those benefits. And then you have a difficult conversation with your stakeholders about, oh yeah, you're never going to get that value. So I think it's just make sure that the decisions you make, you stick to.
I really like that. That's a good thing that we can underpin a lot of today's chat. Stick to those decisions. Let's talk about operating model. So do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So operating model, we spoke a bit about this before, and operating model is arguably one of the most important parts of a transformation, and often isn't always done in line with the technology. And that's just because the scale of change is massive for the organisation to get used to a new system and get used to a new way of working, new people to go to for things. Sometimes it's done before and sometimes it's done after. And that means that they're not always tied up together. So the operating model, ideally, you would do at the same time as your technology. But if you don't, and you kind of rely on one before the other, you need to factor that into your design and benefits realization, and consider the time to upskill your people into that. So 6 months after go live, your business partners aren't going to suddenly become strategic and start using all this data and analytics. It's going to take a while to embed that into the organization and embed that into their style and your priorities. So operating model is one of those bigger pieces that it's very timing, I'd say, is really important about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it runs throughout the whole Less Stress series, because we called it out in the second piece as well. So Lou, just any kind of thoughts around that impact of operating?
Yeah, the only other thing that we talked about that is front of mind is often when you do a huge scale change, which is often those that we're involved in, you redefine the whole op model. So that often means recruiting new people. It means upskilling significant amounts of people. It might mean setting people up in different countries. It might mean the teams that you used to work with side by side are now the other side of the world. So I think there is a level of patience that you need to give the people involved in these operating model activities, because they ultimately are people at the end of the day. So you need to make sure you stick to the human side of all of this activity. So I think it's just making sure that there is that level of patience and checking in and having that change management, but more from a human component. If you're setting up a new shared service centre, you are getting leadership to be present and getting change ambassadors to be present. The more you engage with the people on the ground and throughout that operating model, the more you will get a better job done ultimately.
Yeah. And does that ring through when we get to step 3, when we're talking about process optimization as well? Because ultimately it's that human element too, yeah?
Exactly. And they're the ones delivering it, right? So those new processes often might be driven by new people. So onboarding those people in the right way to the organization's culture shouldn't be forgotten, because you need the people to deliver the processes. Like those swim lanes on a process map, there is a person in that role doing that job in 12 months time. So you need to make sure you remember that, and also have an opportunity to let them give you feedback. Because when we come on to process optimization, one of the critical things is you define process in theory, but you don't test it until it's in practice. And when it's in practice, it's the people that are delivering it. So you need to be checking in with them to say, is it working? If it's not working, tell us why. We might need to go back a step to the design and unpick it a bit to then redesign it.
That feedback piece is really important. Also, the process optimization, any sort of bits you want to add to what Lou was talking about there?
Yes. So process optimization, I think what I wanted to link to operating model is better tech doesn't necessarily mean a smaller team. Sometimes you'll need a bigger team because you've got more complicated tech to run. You're actually expanding your portfolio. So expanding your processes, making them more data-driven, making them more analytical. So therefore, that means they're more complex with regards to output, not necessarily steps. Your processes will become larger because you'll be documenting them. You'll be making sure you've got policies for them. You'll be continuously improving them. Your governance around processes will become a lot greater. That may mean you need people looking at experience. You need people looking at metrics. You need people looking at what new functionalities coming down the line that we could implement. So all of that comes into play. You're not necessarily just fulfilling your recruitment process step by step anymore. It's about what insights can we take from certain points? What can we do to make the hiring manager's job easier? That definitely becomes a lot more meaty. And also, don't stop. Like, you've gone live, make sure that what you've designed is actually working. Keep your stakeholders engaged. Have a friendly team of business users that can give you candid feedback so you can always improve your processes. Your worst nightmare is no one uses the system because it's not working for them. And then you never know why. That just becomes unhelpful behaviour because you never really know what isn't quite right.
The red thread that runs throughout some of this is that feedback for your employees. And it's the same with step 4, right? I'll stick with you, Ffion, and then we'll go to Lou on, because step 4 is adoption. And you just said it, if nobody's using the system. So do you want to just talk through what we talk about in that particular section on adoption?
Yeah, adoption. Sometimes you will go live and you'll run campaigns. Go in and check your addresses right. Go in and make sure your bank details are correct. So you'll get a lot of buzz. You'll get people going in. You'll get people going, wow, this is so much better than the last system. I can now see my total comp. Like, that's amazing. And then it will go dead. No one will log in for 3 months, and then the program team will panic. Why is no one using the system? But actually, on average, most colleagues will only go in a system if it's kind of annual performance cycle to book annual leave. They might want to do a bit of learning or update a goal, but it's very kind of targeted. They'll go in for certain reasons. So tailor your engagement and your communications around those HR calendar events and then test it after. Test how people found their first experience with looking at their performance goals. Find out how many people are giving regular feedback in the system. It's making sure that you're not just looking at the classic metrics of number of logins a week, because that doesn't tell you anything. It's about making the moments that matter when you're going in, communicating with employees about going in for a purpose, because we're all employees somewhere. You'll get those emails, check this out, and you think, why am I going to randomly log into the HR system?
Yeah, I'm busy. I'm doing my day-to-day job.
Exactly. So it's making it meaningful in that sense as well, because the program team, obviously it's been their life for the last 12 months. So they think it's the most exciting thing to have ever happened. And of course for us as consultants it is, but for regular employees, it's not that revolutionary. So don't expect your metrics to match that. Think about timing your go live a few months before a big HR event, and then you can really test your adoption.
Yeah. Lou?
I would absolutely agree. You might not go live with all functionality at the same time. We've seen many versions of a go live plan or an implementation plan. Phase the functionality in a timely fashion around the events. The things you then want to hang off are booking your annual leave, encouraging people to, because everyone wants to take holiday, right, at various points in the year. So I think there's certain things you can do throughout the year. Most of the critical points in that change journey are those milestones of HR activity, calendar activity.
Okay, we're going to go on to step 5 now, which I know we talk about a lot at LACE, which is data and AI. Lou, we'll kick off with you.
Just before we do go on to the exciting side of AI, I think the only thing we did talk about earlier, which we haven't mentioned, is the connection between process and knowledge, and also the role of the GPO. GPO is the global process owner, and it comes into adoption as well, which is why I think it's helpful to mention it. So the importance of knowledge to consider is throughout the process, anything that changes, you need to make sure any kind of knowledge is updated because of the whole adoption and calendar piece. You might not recruit someone every week. You might do it twice a year. You might do it once a year. So it's really critical to have that availability of video or knowledge article or whatever form of content it is. You need to make sure you have the kind of how-to guide or whatever you call it in your organization. So I think making sure that you're constantly thinking about knowledge. And again, to the op model piece, you will have knowledge owners. You will have people who need to author the actual content. And that links back to this concept of a GPO. Each process needs an owner, because when it changes, if there's a decision that needs to be taken, that needs to be taken by a point person, and that point person needs to be often quite senior and the person who can make the decision. So again, it's about throughout adoption, that global process owner needs to be in that conversation, because they can be there through the design. But then what often happens is that network of owners of parts of the operator model or the activity done throughout that model can be forgotten. And so I think, again, keeping that structure is really important. Just before we went on, I thought that was
that is really important. There's somebody who's got that overarching view, what's happening and what do we need. A really good point, because it happens to all of us desk.
Exactly.
So they might undertake an action 1, 2, 3, talk 4 times a year, and we've all done it. Like, it happens with passwords. Like, you get that whole single sign-on thing and then you forget your password. It drives you mad, doesn't it? Drives you mad. Let's talk about data.
Yes. So I guess we've already said kind of, the op model is arguably the kind of most important part. I would challenge that slightly.
No, you are right.
I think data is ultimately the most important thing, because without clean quality data, much else goes well. Data is the fundamental foundation of any good system. It will drive the processes. The tables will work in the back end.
And also adoption. If you spend millions on a new system and encourage people to go in and something's wrong, you will never win them back again, because they'll go, well, it's rubbish.
Exactly. And that might be, and you can always blame data migration or data coming from a legacy system, but it's not really an excuse. You should always clean it. You should always check it. There's always a period of cleansing. There's obviously technologies that are available where you can kind of aid that process. But I think that extract, transform and load you may hear during data migration activities are critical to success. If you get that wrong, there's no point talking about this AI activity, because it just won't work. I think that is the piece I would mention. I think, again, making sure that you've got that kind of data governance in place. And also, I think any future activities, continuous improvement is reliant upon data. Knowledge, you would use the data that sits behind the knowledge and metadata to improve and work on that. Process mining allows you to see where activities are getting blocked in processes. Making things better day by day is critical for the data. Everything is underpinned by that. It's essential to success, and it should have a heavy focus in any work stream or an implementation that follows through in terms of that op model as well.
And I think, to lead on, invest in your data now and get the benefits and the AI capability later, because it's not easy. Some organizations, if they've had acquisitions or have grown quickly, or may have multiple different systems, and it could take a number of months to cleanse that data, but invest in it now, and then you'll be able to go on your AI journey a lot quicker because you will already have the foundations there.
Yeah, and in some businesses, step 6 is about that vendor partnership. Some businesses and some providers, you've already got AI implemented into the systems, embedded into the systems anyway.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about what we say when we're talking about that importance of the vendor partnership and that relationship?
Yeah, so the vendor partnership, I mean, typically clients that we work with will go for the tier 1 vendors. These have millions of customers across the world. They know what they're doing. They are experienced. They've worked in every industry, every situation. Use them and use the network of customers as well. Companies have is it like a customer
Success
support
manager.
group?
Yeah. No, like forums.
Yeah, where you can share problems and challenges. You get that from the minute you sign your licenses. We've heard some great success stories of customers working on that. And also your customer success manager, which I believe you have right through. So you have one during implementation, and when you're looking at your digital kind of optimization, you'll have a customer success manager that will check how you're getting on with the new releases, how you're finding the system, any challenges you have. Include them as part of your governance model and keep them close.
Yeah, and I think you should utilize their roadmap and their rollout schedules through their quarterly releases or half-yearly releases, whatever technology you go with, to align to your business strategy. So you will often have a wish list. The forums often will allow you to vote. The voting will allow you to drive the vendor roadmap to some extent. Use that to your advantage, because if you have an acquisition that needs something in 6 months' time, or there's an AI agent that is going to add value for you in 3 months' time because of your business strategy, rather than trying to find a customized solution, it will likely be on the roadmap at some point in the future. Use it as a two-way dialogue rather than just not creating the value from it. And as Ffion said, involve them in your governance. Make sure you stick to the quarterly meetings so that you know what is coming, how they can help you. Also, they can give you benchmarking data because they have so many customers and access to so much data. You can use benchmark data to inform different things you're looking into. That can be helpful as well.
And you've been touching on the final step 7 of the third white paper, which is that roadmap evolution.
Yes, so renewal planning. I think most of them are 3 or 5 year contracts with your vendor. Now, unless something's gone terribly wrong, you would likely stick with them for a long while because it's very expensive, very time consuming to continue. But I think what's important is to consider your business may not be the same business it was 5 years ago. You may have gone in a different direction strategically, and you may find that actually you need a more niche learning module than the one you currently have because it doesn't meet your requirements as a business anymore. And I think it's okay to say, actually, we are not utilizing this module, so let's maybe consider not renewing for this module. I don't think that's happened enough. You should be honest and think strategically, is this a right play for us? Most organizations go on this journey because they have too many techs and one data source. So don't confuse things by having multiple different platforms for recruitment or learning. Be mindful of those renewals and have a discussion with decision makers within the business. Think about, okay, what are we going to do next? Are we going to renew this module, or are we going to think about something different?
Yeah, and depending on the license arrangement, sometimes you can kind of move things around. So it's always worth just having a really honest conversation with the tech vendor to say, you know, what is the best thing? The other thing we haven't mentioned is kind of application management system support. Some system implementation partners or vendors themselves offer is something called AMS, which is around the kind of application management support. Involving all of those parties is helpful because they will also let you know what other clients are doing. I think use both the vendor roadmap, but also the advice on the roadmap from the whoever you have the kind of AMS relationship with, because you are paying a lot of money for these arrangements. Therefore, you should get more than just the free lunches they offer, right? You want to make sure you get the kind of expertise and value that can benefit your business.
All of these parties are here to get the best solution for you. If you're not happy, then ultimately you'll not work with them again and you'll be moving away. So these are all important things to point out. We're basically on time, unfortunately. We come to the end of our Less Stress HRIS Part 3 journey. Is there any final thing you want to leave the listeners or watchers with this video on? I'll start with you, Ffion, then we'll get Louise to have the last word.
I would say don't underestimate this part of the journey. We often see customers focus on the business case for the go live and implementation and forget about the optimization piece. So make sure you resource for the optimization piece and include it as part of the program, and include BAU resource to focus on optimization as part of the continuous improvement team. Make sure you factor it in, because if not, you'll be circling around again in 24 months saying, our tech's not working. Yeah. We think we need a new system.
System's broken.
You probably don't. You probably just need to optimize it.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think don't assume that activity can be done as part of the BAU activity. It's not a side of desk. I think optimization needs to be a focused, dedicated activity. The other thing is during optimization, I would say make sure you allocate a relative amount to change budget. So there will be things that you need to do to your technology, and it will be kind of, as we say, off the shelf or vanilla, whatever you want to call it. There will always be a need to invest in some level of build design work. So work with the vendor and the MS partner to allocate that amount of whatever the amount is budget in your kind of ongoing years for some level of kind of optimization.
Change and the change management approach is often overlooked on most projects that we come across. Yeah. It's almost just seen as this side thing that people don't often think about. Amazing, great to have you on. If you want to get a copy of the report, on this page there should be a link. You can fill in your information and then you'll get a copy of the PDF from myself, Ffion, and from Lou. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we'll catch you on the next time on the HR on the Offensive podcast.